Kenobi wasn't a story about Darth Vader's rise, his cruelty, or even the height of Imperial power. It was the story of a man who had already lost everything and was now losing himself. Obi-Wan begins the series not as a Jedi in exile, but as a human being crushed under the weight of his own mistakes. He isn't hiding from the Empire simply to survive. He's hiding from the unbearable possibility that he is responsible for every atrocity committed by the monster wearing Anakin Skywalker's face. The show doesn't treat Vader as a villain to overcome. It treats him as the physical manifestation of Obi-Wan's guilt. From the first episode, the narrative frames guilt as Obi-Wan's central wound. He avoids the Force because he feels unworthy of it, as if opening himself to it would force him to confront the memories he spent a decade burying. His refusal to train, to fight, or even to help strangers isn't cowardice, it's self-punishment. He believes he has forfeited the right to be a Jedi, and it all comes back to one truth he cannot escape. He failed Anakin. The nightmares he suffers aren't random flashes, they're confessions. His internal prison is built from the same flames that consumed his brother on Mustafar. Even his avoidance of Luke is shaped by guilt. Obi-Wan tells Owen he only intends to watch over the boy, but the truth is far heavier. He doesn't believe he deserves to guide Luke. He doesn't think he has the right to shape the future after destroying the past. Every moment Obi-Wan spends in isolation is a consequence of guilt, convincing him that he has nothing left to offer the galaxy. This guilt defines his posture, his silence, and the weight behind every line he speaks. He isn't just depressed, he's spiritually paralyzed. Vader's presence throughout the show functions like a shadow cast across Obi-Wan's psyche. Even when Vader isn't in the room, he is everywhere emotionally. When Obi-Wan learns Anakin is alive, the entire tone of the series shifts. This isn't shock, it's horror. Obi-Wan thought the worst thing he ever did was kill Anakin. Now he must confront that the worst thing he ever did was let him live. Vader becomes a walking reminder of the failure Obi-Wan can't forgive himself for, and the series makes sure every scene with Vader highlights the emotional scar he represents. Their first confrontation is saturated with guilt. Vader doesn't treat it like a duel, he treats it like retribution. When he drags Obi-Wan through the fire, he's creating a mirror of Mustafar. But what's more important is that Obi-Wan barely fights back. He accepts the pain, he accepts the punishment. It's not because Vader is stronger, it's because Obi-Wan believes he deserves it. This is the clearest demonstration that the show's conflict isn't about light versus dark. It's about guilt versus forgiveness. As the story progresses, every mission slowly forces Obi-Wan back into the galaxy. Saving Leia isn't just a rescue mission. It's the first time he has allowed himself to care again, protecting refugees, standing up for strangers, reconnecting with allies. These aren't plot beats, they're therapy. Each action is Obi-Wan rediscovering that doing good is still possible even after catastrophic failure. Guilt told him he had nothing left to give. The galaxy proves otherwise. What the show is actually building toward is emotional resurrection, not physical triumph. Obi-Wan's growth doesn't come from training sequences or new abilities. It comes from accepting responsibility without drowning in self-hatred. By the time we reach the finale, the narrative has positioned him to face Vader, not as a warrior, but as a man confronting the personified form of his trauma. The duel isn't meant to display power, it's meant to display clarity. When the rocks lift and Obi-Wan reconnects with the Force fully, it isn't a return to strength. It's a return to belief. He no longer sees himself as the destroyer of Anakin Skywalker. He sees himself as someone still capable of compassion, still capable of protecting those who need him. The Force did not come back to Obi-Wan. He came back to it. This shift defines the emotional core of the entire series. And then comes the moment that crystallizes the show's thesis. When Vader's mask splits and Obi-Wan sees both the monster and the boy he raised, he breaks. But not because he's afraid, because he realizes that Anakin's fall was not wholly his doing. The line, "I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did," becomes the emotional keystone of the series. Vader is not absolving Obi-Wan. He is revealing the truth Obi-Wan needed to hear to begin healing. This is when the show finally reveals its purpose. Kenobi isn't about Vader becoming a monster. It's about Obi-Wan learning He doesn't have to carry the monster's sins. When Obi-Wan walks away, it's not mercy, it's release. An entire decade of trauma loosens its grip. Obi-Wan is not defeated, nor does he defeat Vader. He simply stops letting guilt define him. The show ends with him at peace, smiling, breathing, alive in a way he hasn't been since the Clone Wars. Kenobi was never about Vader's rise. It was about Obi-Wan's return. From the moment Vader steps into the Kenobi series, the audience assumes he's the narrative focus. He is framed like the ultimate threat, the armoured silhouette emerging from smoke, the mechanical breathing echoing through the dark, the kind of villain whose presence shapes the air around him. But as the episodes unfold, the truth becomes clear. Vader isn't the point at all. He's the mirror. He's the wound exposed. He is the shape of Obi-Wan's trauma, not the arc the story is trying to resolve. The writers use Vader dramatically, but not traditionally. He isn't on a journey. He isn't seeking transformation. He isn't even pursuing conquest in the way he does in other stories. In Kenobi, Vader isn't trying to rule the galaxy. He's trying to fill a hole inside himself, the same hole Obi-Wan is running from. This makes him stationary as a character and symbolic as a force. Every time Vader appears, it's not to move his own story forward. It's to drag Obi-Wan's emotional stagnation into the light. The show deliberately avoids giving Vader internal variety. He doesn't wrestle with conflict the way he does in the comics. He doesn't philosophize like in Rebels. He doesn't demand command like in Rogue One. He is pure obsession, distilled, sharpened, and weaponized. And this is intentional. Complexity would distract from the central theme. Obi-Wan's guilt needs a face, and Vader is that face. The story cannot risk empathy for Vader, or his arc might overshadow Obi-Wan's healing. So Vader remains a wall. Powerful, unyielding, and haunted, but never changing. His cruelty in the series is extreme, but again, purposeful. When he drags innocents through the street, snaps necks and lights fires, it's not simply to demonstrate evil. It is designed to communicate a specific, emotional truth. Obi-Wan sees every death as an extension of his failure. The show wants the audience to feel what Obi-Wan feels. It wants every scream to echo the same question Obi-Wan asks himself daily. Did I do this? Vader's violence is framed as punishment, not spectacle. He hurts the galaxy because Obi-Wan believes he deserves to be hurt. This is why the first duel is so telling. Vader doesn't fight Obi-Wan like an enemy, he fights him like a disappointed memory. He toys with him, stalks him, and dominates him, not because he wants to defeat him, but because he wants to teach him something. That Obi-Wan's guilt is justified. When he drags Obi-Wan through the fire, it's not a tactical decision. It's symbolic retribution. It's Vader telling Obi-Wan, "Now you feel what I felt." And Obi-Wan lets it happen. He barely fights back at all. The duel is an emotional collapse disguised as a lightsaber battle. The series then uses the gaps between Vader's appearances to highlight the slow rebuilding of Obi-Wan's identity. Every interaction with Leia, every moment where Obi-Wan chooses to act instead of hide, every scene where he reconnects with purpose, these are the steps toward reclaiming the person he once was. Vader doesn't interrupt these moments to drive his own arc. He interrupts them to test Obi-Wan's progress. Vader is the emotional barometer of the series. The stronger Obi-Wan becomes internally, the less Vader terrifies him. By the finale, Vader hasn't changed at all, but Obi-Wan has, which changes the meaning of Vader's presence entirely. The second duel is the clearest example of this shift. This is not a rematch of strength. It is a rematch of identity. Obi-Wan isn't fighting Vader. He's fighting the guilt that Vader represents. The choreography reflects this. Obi-Wan is fluid where he was once rigid, focused where he was once fearful. He uses the Force confidently for the first time since the war. The battle is not about dominance, it is about rediscovering self-worth. When Obi-Wan breaks open Vader's mask, the moment is built to reveal two truths simultaneously. First, Vader is not an unstoppable force. He is a suffering, broken man who shaped himself into a monster. Second, and more importantly, Obi-Wan finally sees that Anakin's fall was not his fault alone. The visual split mask, half Anakin and half Vader, is the emotional heart of the series. It empowers the line that follows. "I am not your failure, Obi-Wan." That line is not meant to define Vader. It is meant to free Obi-Wan. Vader's speech is not mercy. It is ownership. He's telling Obi-Wan that he took control of his own fall. He chose the darkness. He embraced it willingly. He killed Anakin Skywalker by his own hand. It is a twisted confession, but it is the most important thing Obi-Wan could ever hear. For 10 years, he believed he ruined Anakin's life. Now Vader is telling him that the responsibility was never his. That truth is the climax of Obi-Wan's emotional arc. This is why Obi-Wan's decision to walk away is so powerful. In the prequel trilogy, Obi-Wan leaves Anakin because he has no choice. In this series, he leaves Vader because he finally can. He doesn't walk away because Vader is helpless. He walks away because he no longer bears the guilt that bound them together. It's the first moment of true freedom Obi-Wan has felt since the Clone Wars. He doesn't need to fix Vader. He doesn't need to save Anakin. He doesn't need to atone for something that wasn't his sin. What makes this ending so brilliant is that Vader doesn't change at all. He remains furious, obsessed, resolved to destroy Obi-Wan. But it no longer matters. Vader's emotional power over the story ends the moment Obi-Wan stops letting guilt dictate his life. The show's final message becomes undeniable. The story ends not when Vader is defeated, but when Obi-Wan no longer defines himself by Vader's existence. From that point on, Vader is no longer a ghost haunting him. He is simply another part of the galaxy, dangerous but no longer spiritually suffocating. Obi-Wan rides toward the horizon, literally lighter, with posture relaxed, voice calmer, and purpose restored. He's no longer a man who failed. He's a man who lives. That's why the series closes with peace. Not triumph. Not victory. Not conquest. Peace. The one thing Obi-Wan lost when Anakin fell. Vader didn't need to die for Obi-Wan to heal. Guilt did. The show wasn't about Vader's dominance. It wasn't about setting up the original trilogy. It wasn't about revenge or rivalry. It was about the quiet miracle of a broken man learning to breathe again, after a decade of believing he didn't deserve to. Vader is the symptom. Guilt is the illness. Healing is the story.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.